Hello, and welcome to the Cancer Journey podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sherry Ann.
So let's start with Pesh and get ourselves grounded. How about you go first today?
Okay, I'll go first. Physically, 3.5. Emotionally, 4. Spirit, 4.2. Hope, 4.3. And my word is kind of that. Sigh. That's my word. How
Okay.
about you?
Okay, physically, I am a 4. Emotionally, I'm a 4.2. Spiritually, I'm a 4.25. And hope is a 4.4. And my word is movement. All right. So our topic today is what is listening really? And everything that goes with listening, everything we think that we know about listening is maybe different than we thought, you know? I mean, I remember being in first grade being taught about like what is attentive listening and being attentive.
Being attentive.
Yeah,
And
and
so, what did you learn in first grade?
that you should be giving whoever's speaking your undivided attention, that you should try your best not to space out, and you make eye contact and you nod along and you do all of that. Um, but it didn't speak to listening in the way that we know it at the Cancer Journey Institute.
So, what comes up for me is while you were talking and getting grounded with your pesh, it was like I was listening. And so the first part of listening is I'm listening to your words.
Mm-hmm.
So you said movement. I said sigh. And those are kind of provocative because it's like, ooh, what's that about? What's underneath that? And I think really listening and being attentive, like you said, is a start, is a great start. What I brought in was curiosity as I was listening, like, movement. And even for myself, when I was thinking about my word that describes me in this moment, it was sigh. And what was that? I mean, it could be interpreted in so many different ways. And for me to even listen to me, it was like, it was kind of as a sigh of, I'm here, and a little bit of relief
Mm-hmm.
of just that doing Pesh checks in with myself, or
Mm-hmm.
lets me check in with myself, and I'm listening to
Mm-hmm.
me from
Yeah.
all those levels, which got me to the okay, that's where I am.
Yeah, that's definitely. So I think that like when we generally in, everyday life say listening, there's this top layer of just hearing
Mm-hmm.
the words individually, hearing this kind of like general feel of it all, and then responding to that. And I think that there's deeper listening, and it comes in different ways. Like you said, one of those ways is like listening to yourself. And Pesh lets us do that, right? It lets us actually like tune in to what's going on here and like listening in more of a way of sensing rather than like literally like the sound of ourselves. Um, because often we don't hear ourselves when we even are speaking. I am such a culprit of that. But when we tune in and listen to what our senses are picking up, not just hearing, and like what we're actually feeling and giving to ourselves in a way that no one else can hear, that is like truly deeply listening to yourself. And there's also this like listening to the other person, right? And different ways of doing that. So, like, when I was talking about attentive listening when I was in first grade, and you sit there and they're like, this is what attentive listening is. Stop playing with your neighbor. It's so the surface, right? And there's this incredible depth that can come with listening. And I think one really easy way to decipher this, and this is something that I feel like is talked about in like the zeitgeist a lot, like I see it a lot in social media, is the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. And I mean, I think that's like a very simple way to put it. It's also very difficult to do. We're so programmed to respond and want to answer so much that like we often cut people off.
Right.
And it can be from excitement from what the other person's saying. It can be excitement about what you're saying. There's so many reasons why we could doing that. And we're not going to go into that like making right now, what we may call excuses of why we do that, but what is the effect that we want by truly deeply listening.
Right. And what we do at CJI is we break it down. There is a kind of a surface level of listening. And that's what we tend to do every day in casual conversation and casual connection. You're standing in line at a post in the post office, and you're chit-chatting about the weather, or you're, talking about what's the environment. I know that when it's a long line, I may have a propensity to complain, like, "Oh, is this always how it's going to be?" However, what I wanted to say about that surface level is it's very topical.
Mhm.
We're just talking about the topic. I don't really know the person, and I'm not really trying to relate to the person, though there is a desire to connect. Um, so the first level is kind of surfacey, topical, and has a desire to connect in some way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's no harm in being in that surface level, especially when it's such a fleeting moment, like you said. There's nothing wrong with just talking a little bit of nonsense with someone, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the most deep intellectual talk of your life. You don't need to know about their family or their relationships or anything like that. Just like, oh, la di da, this and that. And it gives a really light connection to
Yes.
another person. And often we do it in a really soft, positive way. I would like to think that there are rare times when that kind of conversation goes south quickly.
Well, I mean, if you're continuing to talk about the topic and you're really focused on you and the topic and not really the person, it can get kind of not monotonous, but boring. And
Hmm.
so it's like, okay, we're done talking about the weather. Now, what do we talk about?
Hmm.
Generally, if it's something very, very casual, it's kind of like, okay, conversation has ended and is done. If you're talking to somebody that you want more of a connection with, we recommend going deeper, obviously. But
Hmm.
how do you do that, right?
Hmm.
So the next level is kind of mm, attentive listening, kind of what you learned or what your teacher was trying to impart in first grade. And I think that's brilliant that they started back then. And it's kind of that leading forward. I'm hearing your words and I'm taking them in.
Hmm.
And it's more like, okay, yep, I hear you. Yeah, the weather makes you hot. Okay. It's there's a deeper relating and trying to understand what this person's saying with their words.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And um that reflection back is always nice, but when it continues in conversation, it starts to feel one-sided because you're focused only on what the other person is saying. And that can get a little tricky. And so when we say we go deep with conversation and how to do that, the effect that we really want when we're deeply and truly listening is making the person feel seen, heard, and gotten,
Yes,
which we talk about
exactly.
all the time. And it
Exactly.
not only makes them feel that way, but it makes your relationship closer because you better understand them. There's this like synthesization you know what I'm trying to say, of
Yes.
um of all of the words that they've given you, of all the conversation you had, to almost like show that you understand and also add some input to it in your own words. And it
Right.
really it allows the other person to be like, yes, you get me, or be like, no, that's not exactly it. And then continue to get clarity. And you can see why this is a really, really important tool as a coach to listen deeply.
Right. So it can be called deep listening. We call it powerful listening. It's that deeper level than attentive. But attentive's fine. It's about trying to understand the words that somebody is saying. So that's good. You know, there's more connection. There's more leaning in. There's more. Let's just use the word attention. I've also heard this kind of out there in the business world of I'm actively listening. Okay, that's good. But when we want to really have somebody feel seen, heard, and gotten, then it's about me being part of the conversation. Just exactly what you said. It's like it's not one-sided. You're not just talking. It's we're having a conversation versus a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation is about how how it's your presence and what you're saying is impacting me, but also what I'm getting about what you're saying. So it's like this dance that we're having. It's like you'll say, I'm really affected by the weather, trying to fill it, picking an innocuous topic. And I could say, wow, I really get that. When you said, it's sunshine, you kind of lit up and that's really cool.
Yeah.
So there's more involvement in the conversation, and it's a reflection in addition to and then that kind of made me notice, oh yeah, summer's almost here.
Yeah.
How lovely is that? The year goes by so quickly, but taking a moment to really appreciate this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, now that we're getting into some deeper arenas.
And when we are practicing powerful listening, there's this slowing down that happens. Not because we're like, okay, let's slow everything down and have this conversation and sit down and get a cup of tea. Like, no, it's more that instead of jumping to the next thing or s- putting your input in, there's this like reflections that's happening in the moment of noticing what's going on with the other person. Like when you said like, oh yeah, the sun is shining and like I love that. And you're like, yeah, I really see you like light up. Is there like something that it reminds you of? There can be this deeper interest and curiosity, like you said, into what is going on with the other person. And so, I mean, going back even all the way to Pesh, as we were saying, like we chose some very provocative words, and we tend to only give one word when it comes to Pesh, or a short phrase because it is juicy, but we don't have to go deep into the story. When we go into powerful listening, um that trigger of being curious to the words or whatever is given to you, that's the exact feeling that we want to start to feel bubble up in these kinds of deeper conversations. While we love a deep conversation, I'll go ahead and throw this disclaimer in here now that not every conversation needs to or should be a deep conversation. Like that small talk, that light surface stuff, that's totally fine, and that's what a lot of conversation ends up being. But it's so beautiful to notice the difference when you're having a small talk conversation with someone versus when you are really sharing some depth and some intellectual um analysis of what you're experiencing in that time. For lack of a better term, it really doesn't need to be that fancy, but just some deeper like reflection, introspection of what is just said, and not listening to respond but listening to better understand them and asking curious questions. A lot of times those deeper conversations need questions. You can't go
Right.
back and forth without asking someone something if you want to go deeper. And sometimes there's, this is kind of swaying the topic now, but sometimes they don't want to go into a deeper place, or we don't know how to go into a deeper place, and then we start
Right.
to feel that resistance a little bit.
There's a time and place for
Mhm.
all of the conversations. For instance, when I'm just trying to connect to the world and I just want to have light conversation. That surface stuff is great and it does feed us because we're both involved in the conversation, but we're not like digging deep. We're just talking about topics. And there's nothing wrong with that. Then when let's say you're going into the doctor's office, you want him to be listening deeper. You want him to ask the questions of, oh, so you said you feel this in your elbow. Let's talk about that. Now we're just talking about still the topic, but they're now getting into you. But it's pretty one-sided, right? You don't ask the doctor, well, then how's your elbow? It's more like the doctor asking you, and you want him to be paying attention to what you're saying.
Mhm.
So that next level is important, and we want that. Then there's that deeper level that we're talking about, and that is when you really want to be seen, heard, and gotten, and you want to have the other person seen, heard, and gotten, and you're building a deeper relationship, more intimacy, more connectedness. it's
Mhm.
it's where people go, I really like talking to you because you really get me. And
Mhm.
then you feel the same way because it's a two-way conversation. It's like, I know, it's so refreshing. I realize different things that I couldn't just discover by myself. So I really love having that conversation. And you can have that with pretty much anyone as long as both parties agree. And when you're talking in that deeper way, you're looking at the totality of what's around you and available to you, right? You're talking to them with their words, you're taking in their body language, their expressions, you're feeling their energy. Like they may say, "Oh yeah, everything's great," but you feel this energy of something is there. Maybe it's a little sadness or anger, but you could feel something, and you can ask the questions like, "I'm really getting something else here.
Yeah.
It may not be true, but can I just?" You seem in despair,
Mhm.
but your words are saying that, "Oh, everything's fine." Are you trying to be more hopeful, or is that so? What's going on?
Yeah.
And having that, I mean, talk about listening from that level, and someone goes, wow, you're really paying attention, you're really getting me, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just trying to put on a face because I don't want to bother people with what I'm dealing with right now, but thank you for opening up the door because I'd really like to talk about that. Whew. And the safety in that relationship just went super high.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot more communication that comes with that as well, and that level of listening and that depth is because like I do see this only if you're comfortable going there, but I'm just letting you know that I do see it with you, and if you want to talk about it, like I am open and available to it. I do want to tap back on you saying that in these kinds of conversations there needs to be this like agreement amongst the two people. And I completely agree because um it is obviously an unspoken agreement. It's a little more spoken if you're in that deeper level because you kind of ask for permission to go that deep sometimes, or you ask and they say no. There is still kind of unspoken, but there is a little bit more of a vulnerability that you're asking them to offer you. So um, it does come with a little more verbatim of can we go there? And I do think that because it's unspoken, we don't always know what level people are coming in to talk at, if that makes sense. So like I may be coming in ready to have deep conversation with someone, but they're newer to this. They have not played with this and they want to kind of lift it back into like very surface level. And that's the only way they know how to do it. And um that's so fair. I mean, I'll say for my own self, I love a good deep conversation. I have been told many times by my friends that like, oh girl, you like a deep conversation. You really go there, and I'll like eventually I'll be at a party and I'll like pull someone aside and we'll just fall into it. And it's really um it just happens naturally for me. But there are some people who like I'm ready to kind of go there. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I noticed that. Like what made you do that? That sounds so fun." And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, maybe not so fun." And then I'll kind of pry, I guess, or I'll prod to kind of see if they're ready to talk about that. And sometimes they're just fully not, and they're like, "No, let's change the subject to something lighter." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's do that then." Because if they don't want to go there, I can't force them, and I don't want to force them to go there. Another part of this kind of agreement I feel is that when you're going really deep with someone, the focus tends to be on one person than the other. not like I reveal something deep for me and then trade off they reveal something similarly deep about them. It's kind of like we have this string of conversation that is focused on one person, and then it can shift, but it's really if that person, the other person, is able to also go deep, ask those same deep questions. If they're not practiced and they don't know how to deeply listen in that way, seriously, no harm no foul. It's not a bad thing to not be able to do, but if they can't lead that for me, they'll never know me in that deep level.
And besides permission, it also takes courage,
Hmm.
to have that deep conversation where you're feeling seen, heard, and gotten, and the person you're talking to is seen, heard, and gotten, requires safety. And so somebody has to go first if you want to build that type of relationship. And those relationships are, oh, sometimes we classify them like, oh, I can talk to my best friend like this. I can say anything.
Hmm.
Well, truly, you can do that if both parties are agreeable in almost any situation. Maybe not a stranger you're just meeting, but with people that you know. And I'm going to take us back to like a work situation where you're in this environment together, and so you can choose to have a deep, safe, and really fulfilling relationship, or you can just have, a very surface one. And that's really fine. But what we want you to know is when you have these deeper conversations and the relationship becomes deeper, those are some of the things that sustain us as human beings, because we want connection and we do want that deep connection. We don't always know how to do that because it requires me, who's starting that depth, like you. Okay, so you loved going there, so it's easy. But it requires somebody being vulnerable to share what they're seeing in the other person, or sharing something of themselves that's not something you would normally just kind of pop out and say. It's revealing something that matters to you, hoping that this is a safe container and that the person's going to see you and hear you and get you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's really the effect, right, of what is really listening, is that you enhance your relationships. You go even deeper knowing them and what makes them tick and why they do the things that they do, right? Like, it's so easy to be like, oh, yeah, I know what they do for work and I know where they live and I know, all those, I wouldn't call them surface things, but those facts of their life, that they live in day to day. But even the why or how they feel about something or what they rather be doing or what their dream is, or all of those like things that make us so uniquely human, because we're not just what we do for work, we're not just where we live, we're not just whatever age or gender or race we are. We're so much more than that, and that's not something that you can ever really see from the surface. You need to ask those deeper questions, and you don't have to ask them to everyone. It's just like the people that you really care about too, the people that you really want to know that. I mean, um, I think everyone wants to be known, especially to the people that matter, and it really tells people that they matter to you when you ask those questions, and that it matters to you, like why they do the things they do and what they rather be doing. And um, that's how, I mean, I have a very creative um life for myself. But if I don't talk about that and I don't have people who are curious about it, I don't have opportunities to share that love of mine, or I don't have opportunities to make connections and new partnerships and relationships that help me build into that. Um and it's not all just professional. It gets to be anywhere between like completely casual to professional and everything in between. We get to really foster those relationships in a way that maybe they don't have with other people. Maybe you don't have them with other people, but it's a choice to really take the time to listen and slow down with someone and notice what's going on with them.
Really listening to somebody at this deep level, this powerful listening, is a gift. It truly is a gift, because as human beings, we crave being connected. We don't want to be separate. There may be introverts that need to have time, you know, on their own, and that is fine and that's real, but it doesn't mean they want to be separate. So listening really is a connector. It is a way for us to feel part of something else, part of the world, part of the community. And when we're discounted or when we're not seen, it feels separate. And in that separation become there can ills can happen. Like emotions let us know that something is happening that we need to pay attention to. So my takeaway is that listening is so important. And the better you get with listening, because listening is caring. You know, it's being kind, it's caring, it's really, dare I say, it's loving the world and the people who are in it and listening to them so that they feel seen, heard, and gotten. So if you want to be connected and if you want to care, listening is the best way you can do that. All right, Pesh, for physical, for 2, emotional, for 3, spiritual, for hope. And my word is caring.
Okay, my takeaway that listening is, we take it for granted. Like we think that it's so easy to like truly listen and hear what someone's words are and to have conversation, because from when we're babies, that's like how we learn. It's like we hear conversation, we're listening, we start picking up, and then we put ourselves into the mix of it. But to just listen to what someone's saying and hear them and nod along is one thing, and then it's another thing to really hear what's underneath just the words, and to hear both of them and let them both have resonance for you and your interaction with the people that you care about. And like just as you said, like deeply listening is truly caring about someone and wanting to know more and having that curiosity. It's a good indicator that this is an important person for you, especially if that's something that you feel inclined to do and you really want to make time to do that, because we don't automatically want to make time for people that we don't want to know more about. So I think it becomes a little bit of like a litmus test, and also like a superpower to be able to like listen deeply with the people who want to be seen. Because I think why that idea of like listening to respond versus listening to understand is so in the zeitgeist is because in this day and age when we're so separate from people, it's so easy to like literally be separate. We can have text conversations, we have phone conversations, whatever, but to really be in there with someone and have the kind of conversation where you get to know them more deeply is um very rare. And it's something that, like you said, as humans we really crave that deep understanding of one another and what makes us unique and special and like what drives us individually. My pesh, so physically 4. Emotionally, I am a 4.25. Spiritually, a 4.25. And hope is a 4.5. And my word is vulnerability. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Cancer Journey podcast. We'll be back next week with a new episode.
Have a lovely rest of your day. And remember, you are more powerful than you realize.